Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. My guest today, Gina McCarthy, the former administrator of the EPA. This is part two of our special two-part series. If you haven't seen part one, you can watch it online now. Gina, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be back, Aaron.
Hey, so I want you to talk about what's happening to these extraordinary plans to address environmental issues. You have an administration which is basically putting or trying to put everything in reverse. Some things it's easy for them to do. Other things, it's not that easy for them to do. Let's talk about the Climate Action Plan, for starters, where this administration obviously has a different perspective on if that plan should even exist.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I think the administration's a little bit out of touch with the reality of energy today. And I mean, we can have a debate about this if you want, Aaron, but it seems pretty clear to me that the clean energy train in the United States left the station and it is moving. This is one of those successes where you try to intervene through regulation to make a market change, and boy, the investment in the clean energy world today is amazing throughout the world and in the United States. So it's winning. So the idea that we have to now go back and revisit the Clean Power Plan, we have to go back and deny climate science, it's out of touch with the world as it exists today. Our ability to grow jobs and to continue our economic strength is all about continuing to realize that climate change is real. We're heading to a low carbon future. Industry knows it. Cities and towns know it. They're stepping up. It seems that only the folks in Washington are trying to think about how to go back to the 60s or the 80s rather than look at the future, which is cleaner and brighter than ever.
So in regard to the Clean Power Plan, obviously the administration has made significant efforts to not just destabilize, but eliminate it. What's going to happen, and what do you think, what's going on in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, they came in really wanting to take everything down, and that was really a prime target. And the Clean Power Plan, for those who may not know, is the first national standard we've ever set on utilities to reduce their amount of carbon pollution. And it really was designed in a way that was following the energy market, not pushing it out. But it did set a marker so that by 2030 we have to keep these investments going and we have to get significant reductions. But what we're seeing today is it actually is pretty well designed, I think, mainly because we paid attention to science. We understood that the climate was changing. We looked at the energy world. We made it moderate, but continued to march forward. And what we see now is that so many states are well beyond where we ever expected them to be in the first compliance period, which is 2022. So the clean energy world is traveling at a pace faster than we anticipated. And I know that we did the kind of outreach we were supposed to do. We met with everybody in the world. We generated 4 million comments on our rule because we met with everybody and we told them to tell us what you know. What do you think? And we listened to that. I think we did it right. I think it's going to hold up to scrutiny. And what we see in the repeal proposal by the administration is that they're not really developing an argument that hasn't already been raised, already addressed. You know, it's just sort of some tired old arguments about climate change not happening, you know, and I just think they're out of touch with the world today and where our economy needs to go.
When you look at what's happening with clean power, with in particular renewables, where you have the cost of energy being produced by wind sources dropping precipitously, when you look at what's happened in solar over the past just several years in terms of the decrease in cost per kilowatt hour that can be produced, is it possible that, and you talked about mapping the market, where the market is really accelerating on its own at this point. If, let's say, you didn't have the Clean Power Plan, isn't it possible we're going to end up at where you wanted to be and where we should be anyway?
I don't think we're going to lose a lot of steps in the clean energy world until we get new leadership in D.C. So I'm confident that what we did was right, and I'm confident that what you say is correct. It's in the market now. Here's the frustration. You know, it's not like we're sitting around in the Obama administration saying, what can we do to make demands on the public utilities that they just can't meet because we think there's a beautiful world out there that we're not heading towards. The fact of the matter is, there is a cleaner, healthier world that is actually being driven by the market itself. What we tried to do with the Clean Power Plan, as I said, is to make sure that continued investment happened. We don't want to just get to 2025. I want to get to 2030. When 2030 comes, I want the U.S. to be leading the charge to the 2050 timeline so that we can get where we all need to go. And the frustration is that it pays for consumers. It's great investment opportunity for utilities. They're making money. It is actually a cleaner future because every time you reduce your carbon pollution, you are sucking with it all kinds of traditional, conventional pollutants that impact your health. So why are we all jumping for joy at where we are and where we're heading?
Well, in that vein, you look at coal plants. I mean, we are not adding coal plants today. Though, despite the president's goal was to, reinvigorate the coal mining industry. That's certainly not happening based on demand for coal in the United States.
It's a good soundbite, though, for folks that have been left behind. And Aaron, really, that's the challenge. Why is it that the wealthiest country in the world can't figure out what to do with the economies that are no longer viable? And with those communities. Well, that's the real challenge.
Well, and what I'm saying is that it's market forces, irrespective of the federal government or any government entity, that are phasing out coal. It's not because of a federal edict from the EPA in the past or anything else.
And they've tried to, take steps that sort of improve the viability of coal, and it's certainly not working.
It's not enough. I mean, it may be 2 steps forward, but the market's already moving 5 steps back.
But the issue is, why are we trying to do that? You know, if you're really concerned about coal miners, don't start questioning a silica standard. That is what's leading to lung disease that's spiking right now in coal miners. Let's figure out how to help those communities. What do they need? What's their economy that will move them forward? You know, the world is changing rapidly in a way that government cannot keep up with. But you can look at where markets are heading, and if they're heading in a way that's healthy and that continues to grow, support that. If they're heading in a way where some people are left behind, pull them up. Give them benefits for retraining and other opportunities to grow their economy differently. West Virginia is a beautiful place. Why isn't tourism their #1 thing to do? How do we revive those areas? There's a lot going on and a lot we can do other than deny the world as it exists today.
All right, when we come back, I want to talk about cafe standards. And I'm not talking about food, although I am hungry. We'll be right back with Gina in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Hal Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Hal Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm with former EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. So I want to talk about the CAFE standards
Yes.
and fuel economy.
Yes.
And it just strikes me that if you look at the public, everybody, almost everybody, wants to drive a vehicle, even if it's a big vehicle that gets great gasoline mileage.
That's right.
I don't know anyone who says, I want to get a vehicle that gets as little miles per gallon as possible. So for the corporate average fuel economy standards, the CAFE standards, and I had talked to Secretary Salazar about this as well in the past, and to Secretary Moniz when he was on the show. It seems like it's great to have national goals. It's great to work with the industry and see how good a job we can do. Yet you now have an administration that is really intent on reducing or slowing down the imposition of those standards. Tell me what the basis of that is and why it's right or wrong. Well, I know why you're going to say it's
just
wrong.
so your listeners understand is that the Department of Transportation worked with EPA. The Department of Transportation did fuel economy standards. We did a greenhouse gas standard. And we worked with the industry out to 2025 to understand how technology was evolving and what their obligations ought to be. And so we reached agreement on that in two chunks, two different rulemakings. And right now, that's what's up for grabs. That's what this administration is rethinking. And honestly, technology advancements indicate that what we estimated for reductions and cost associated with that the picture is even better than we estimated. More technologies are built. It's lower cost. The big challenge for automakers, and it seems to be historic, is they just can't seem to figure out how to keep up with consumer demand. And you end up ceding lots of the market to other countries who understand that you can have really fuel economic vehicles and clean vehicles, and people like them better as long as they perform as well, and the choices remain. And that's sort of how we designed it. Now, the really interesting thing, though, is that that's no longer, I think, their biggest concern. They like certainty because they take a really long time to make changes. But what's the real challenge for them now is that the European Union has announced that in 2040 they are banning the internal combustion engine. China is now controlling the world market on vehicles. That's the biggest market for GM. That's why the GM CEO goes over there and talks to them about please don't do what the EU did, only that's not going to happen because China has the most efficient fuel, a cell fuel system for vehicles anywhere in the world. They're going to outcompete us. So what the automakers should stop doing is thinking about what we're regulating and start thinking about their own ability to keep up with changing demands, both here and in the world. That's the challenge.
So with a standard, I mean, we're shooting for a standard of over 50 miles per gallon.
Yes.
But in reality, 50 miles per gallon when tested is not 50 miles. That's only like, 36, 37 miles per gallon. It would seem to me that should not be difficult on a fleet basis to obtain. What is the industry's position on the repeal? Do they want to, I assume there are many players in the industry that would like to see that number knocked down.
It's a split.
Is it?
It is a split. And I think, what I think people need to understand is when we designed those standards and did the costs associated with them and saw that people could get their money back in a couple of years for the cost and that they were great, really inexpensive reductions in emissions that cause public health problems. We realized that we indicated that there would only be 1 or 2% of electric vehicles in the fleet. Now, what the auto industry needs to think about is that was a very minimal amount. You have both the U.S. and California as a state with legal juice to keep pushing this, and they are pushing hard on electric vehicles. If the rest of the world is pushing hard on electric vehicles, if they're going to win if we don't step up, why are our car companies not thinking about being more competitive? Are we not realizing again that the world has changed? Why are we going to let automakers huddle down and continue to think about how we build light-duty trucks without making light-duty trucks efficient, or SUVs without making SUVs efficient? They're just not thinking about the world today and where it's heading. And it doesn't surprise me, because when we began to intervene in this area, the federal government had to bail them out from bankruptcy. And part of that bailout was an honest discussion about the car companies, 10 years ago, not selling cars that people wanted to buy. If they want to go down that road again, it's only our economy that's going to lose. It's only our jobs that are going to go. And that's a big only.
All right, in the context of what's happening in Washington, what special role now does or can California play?
Well, that's a really good point, Aaron. And I think what's happened is, because this administration has decided to really take a back seat in terms of providing leadership on issues like environmental protection and as well as climate change, states are really stepping up. Cities are stepping up. You've got this initiative called America's Pledge, which has cities, states, and industry, businesses stepping up and saying, if we don't have federal leadership, we still are going to provide leadership in the United States, because we can do it. And Aaron, if you look at the history of environmental protection and what we've ever done to make progress, it's always started at the grassroots level. So while you can get discouraged about wondering what Washington is doing, very often Washington isn't the laboratory of innovation, it is states. And right now, I think the most exciting thing is that it's not just California stepping up, and it's not just the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which I was involved in my home state in Massachusetts, but there's industries everywhere, there's businesses everywhere that see the handwriting on the wall. They want strong leadership on this. They want our economy to stay strong. They want to make money, and they want to actually respond to the markets of today and the future. And they know the young people today are not going to tolerate going back and now rethinking traditional protections that they have relied on and assumed would be there forever.
Now, you mentioned, of course, cities, states, and businesses. The Paris Climate Accord, where this administration has given notice that it wants to withdraw from that agreement. It's actually a 4-year process to withdraw, so a lot could happen, to put it mildly. But your reference, a lot of states stepped up, cities stepped up, businesses that were proceeding on the basis of the accord, irrespective of what the president or anyone else says. But what are the implications of the withdrawal from the accord? I'm sure you had to be disappointed.
Oh, sure. Well, it was not just the disappointment of the announcement, but how it was framed. It just really didn't hold water to my understanding of the world that we live in today. And honestly, it's very disappointing. And I think one of the reasons why there was a stand-up group to actually try to speak for the United States around Washington was to try to not lose too much ground in the international world. It's a little, honestly, embarrassing to be the only country that's left hanging out there as if we know something that nobody else knows.
I think Syria and Nigeria maybe.
They actually joined.
Oh, is that
okay,
right?
So we've hung out. Even Syria joined.
Amazing.
So, I mean, that was announced at the last IPCC meeting. And so I do think that it's a long, drawn-out process for all these rollbacks. A rule has to happen. You can't trump a rule without a rule. Okay? And the same with the announcement. It was an announcement in Paris. But whether or not we do it is still a really significant question. And the longer it goes, the more people feel the impacts from climate change. You see consistently higher and higher numbers of people that are willing to acknowledge that the world's changed and we have to take action. And if we don't move soon, the only thing we lose is an ability for that leadership, for that economic opportunity. We're ceding it to China because they're the ones investing in renewable energy. They're the ones going over to the developing world and selling technologies today. They're the ones coming here and selling advanced technology today. Why would this be the case? Why wouldn't the U.S. want to do what we always do? And we're the ones that kick butt, not get our butts kicked.
All right, well, it's not too late. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Gina in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
Safely stop fires around your home. Introducing the Fire Ice XT 20-ounce aerosol canister. Fire Ice XT is an eco-friendly water-based fire suppressant gel. Unlike a traditional fire extinguisher, Fire Ice XT is a highly effective, non-toxic firefighting agent that is easy and safe to use around your home, family, and pets. Available at Amazon.com or call 800-924-4874.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
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 I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch The Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is our final segment in part 2 of our special 2-part series with former EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. So I wanted to ask you in terms of your public health perspective, the Clean Water Act, and a lot of people felt that the Waters of the United States effort was an overreach. Do you think it was, and what do you see as its future?
I really don't think it was. And this is, it was a difficult process, and one, again, that we did a lot of outreach on. The Supreme Court told us 2 times that the way in which we were interpreting the Clean Water Act failed to be based on sound science. We needed to do work. So we spent a multi-year process to look at science, and what it was trying to get us to ask of ourselves is what waters need to be protected in order to maintain sound drinking water. 130 million people rely on rivers and streams that are currently unprotected. And they rely on them for their drinking water. So it was all about how do you know what to protect and what don't you need to get involved in? Because it's the second question that really is essential to answer, right? From a regulatory perspective. So we did the science, we identified it, and we worked with the agriculture community to try to understand what do we need to define better so that you can continue to do your work unabated and we can get this right and still protect our drinking water supplies for those 130 million. Did I say 1,000? I meant billion if I did. Million people. And so it was a challenging process, and we came out with it. But I think what I found out, Aaron, and it wasn't an overreach. It basically was saying, what are you required to do, and how do you use the science to determine it? That's not an overreach. We didn't change the law or even expand our ability to intervene. We actually set very firm boundaries so you'd never have to ask questions again, instead of everything's in unless we find you or something.
So
like
is it in jeopardy today?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it's in significant challenge because it goes to circuit courts all over the place, but there are states that didn't sue, and those states are soon going to be free to actually utilize that. And over time, people will see that it provides an ability for them those folks who need permits to get them more quickly, because there's not a million questions. And for those people that don't need a permit, it's very clear. It tells you outside of these boundaries, you're unlikely to have a significant impact, so go away. Don't need to talk to us. So I think it provides clarity in a way that we needed. But what you found out was that, the agriculture community in particular were the ones that stood up because they thought we were interfering with the use of water in a way that would be damaging to them. But we really did a good job to expand exemptions for agriculture. And what you realized was they just didn't understand their obligation under the law to begin with.
All right, well, I guess we'll see what happens. I want to ask you, do you think the EPA's endangerment finding would survive a challenge?
Yeah, very much so.
Tell
I
me
think
why.
the reason you see it not being challenged is because it's kind of a moot point. basically because it's been looked at 3 times by the Supreme Court, and each time it's passed muster. And every time we did a rule that was about regulating carbon pollution, we updated it with the current science. And the science is just overwhelming. You just can't get around that. And the endangerment finding is really a predicate to us regulating carbon pollution because it looks at science and asks 2 fundamental questions. And it asks whether or not the carbon pollution is in fact a danger to health, and it asks the second question whether it's an endangerment to our welfare. And if there's a yes to those questions, you're in, you have to be regulated. So the challenge that this administration faces is that even though they may want to get rid of the Clean Power Plan and other efforts we've taken, I think the endangerment finding is absolutely solid, so you can't question that piece of it. And the challenge is the science keeps getting firmer and firmer. The entire world recognizes it, so it's going to be a little bit weird for this administration to question it. And also, the world is changing in a way that if we embrace this and do this well, we will win in the long run economically and for jobs as well. So I think it's a dangerous, slippery slope for them to waste their time re-looking at the endangerment finding, and I think they know that. You can only ask for indulgence from the courts for so long, then they'll kind of lose their patience.
All right, you mentioned the long run. Looking back, last question, looking back in terms of if you had known, which you didn't, but if you had known, and if you think if the president had known, President Obama had known that he was going to be succeeded by Donald Trump or a Donald Trump-like person, and you were going to be succeeded by a Scott Pruitt, who at the time while you were EPA administrator was suing.
Lots of times, yes.
Suing the EPA. What could you have done differently, or what lessons can you pass on to future EPA administrators and future presidents in terms of how do we codify some of these changes in a manner, kind of 2 questions, in a manner where it's much more difficult to modify or change them, number one. And then secondly, could there have been deals that you made or that the president made, that the White House made, where there were compromises with the legislative branch, where you didn't get necessarily everything you wanted, but it would have been much more difficult to then have those overturned. So talk about.
Aaron,
I know
yeah, I know. I understand
sorry,
your
we're
question.
out of time, but go ahead.
That's okay. Well, the first thing to remember is that President Obama actually did spend his first 4 years working with Congress trying to get, and narrowly missing getting, climate legislation.
Right.
So it was very clear at that point.
That.
Yeah, I bet. And you know, it's very clear that partisanship is really not going to allow that to happen, and that's why, you know, understanding that it was regulated under the Clean Air Act and moving forward was important. But you know, honestly, I don't think I would have done anything differently. Because, you know, I've been a public servant my whole life. I know that things change. I know winds do shift. And the most important thing that you can do is to actually follow the law, follow the science, do the kind of outreach that engages people so that even if those winds shift, the public understands what you did, why you did it, and they can maintain the energy even when leadership won't. And that's what we did, and that's what you see happening today.
All right. On that note, I want to thank my guest, Gina McCarthy. Gina, thank you so much.
It's great to be here.
Oh, you were super. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to Aaron at harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.